On January 20th, 2021, Joseph R. Biden was inaugurated as the 46th President of the United States. His predecessor, Donald J. Trump, left the White House for Florida on that cold yet sunny January day. While pundits were quick to mention that Mr. Trump was the first president since George H.W. Bush in 1992 to lose his re-election bid, he is now on a short list of one-term presidents who have lost the national popular vote in consecutive elections. Besides Mr. Trump, there are only two other former presidents on this list. They are John Quincy Adams and Benjamin Harrison. Today's video discusses how these three presidents earned their places on this short list, and, in so doing, briefly answer the question presented in the title of today's video, why the national popular vote matters. Before we proceed, let's briefly summarize how the United States chooses its president. If you, the viewer, have had a chance to watch our video on swing states, then you're familiar with the Electoral College. Each state has a contingent of presidential electors who in most cases are chosen via statewide popular vote. The candidate who wins enough states to surpass 270 electoral votes becomes president. Usually, the victorious candidate wins both the electoral vote and the national popular vote, yet there have been exceptions. Since 1788, 5 elections, 1824, 1876, 1888, 2000, and 2016, yielded presidents who won the Electoral College but lost the popular vote. 3 of these presidents have lost the popular vote in 2 consecutive elections. So without further ado, here they are. John Quincy Adams was born in 1767 in Braintree, Massachusetts. He was the son of John Adams, America's second president. Out of all the men who held the presidency after the founding generation, John Quincy Adams was among the most qualified for the job. He was educated in both the United States and in Europe, spoke multiple languages, including French, Greek, and Latin. By 1790, he had become an attorney like his father. Mr. Adams was also a senator, a diplomat, and a family man. In 1797, he married Louisa Johnson. They had 4 children, George, Charles Francis, John Adams Jr., and Louisa Catherine. In 1814, he helped negotiate the Treaty of Ghent, which ended the War of 1812 with Great Britain. 3 years later, President James Monroe appointed Adams as his Secretary of State. In that office, Adams negotiated continental boundary treaties with Great Britain and Spain, and he also wrote the 1823 Monroe Doctrine. A year later, Adams ran for president against 3 candidates, Andrew Jackson, William Crawford, and Henry Clay. While Jackson received the most popular votes, no candidate won a majority in the Electoral College. As a result, the election went to the House of Representatives. According to the 12th Amendment of the Constitution, the House chooses the president among the top 3 finishers in the Electoral College, which meant that Henry Clay, who finished 4th, was out of the running. Yet Clay was Speaker of the House, and in a position to be a kingmaker. Clay despised Jackson, but he and Adams held a shared belief in the American system of economic development, which will be outlined shortly. Thus, Clay allegedly convinced enough representatives to select Adams as the winner of the 1824 election. Now, despite only serving 1 term, John Quincy Adams was one of the most forward-looking presidents in U.S. history. His vision for the American system included tariffs to protect emerging domestic industries from foreign competition, a network of roads and canals to connect the western states with the Atlantic coast, an enlarged navy, a naval observatory, the establishment of a uniform system of weights and measures, a national bankruptcy law, the creation of a cabinet-level interior department, and a national university focused on scientific education. Until Adams' tenure, no other president had outlined such an expansion of federal power. Unfortunately, Congress did not share his views. Except for a protective tariff in 1828 and funding some roads and canals, Congress blocked most of Adams' agenda. To make matters worse, Adams committed a political blunder when he named Henry Clay as his Secretary of State in 1825. Upon hearing this news, Andrew Jackson accused Adams and Clay of making a corrupt bargain. And this accusation, along with the public's perception of him as an aristocrat, damaged Adams' re-election prospects. In 1828, he suffered a landslide defeat against Andrew Jackson. However, Adams' political career was far from over. 2 years later, Massachusetts voters elected him to the House of Representatives. He served in Congress until his death in 1848 at age 80. We would also like to add that Adams participated in the 1841 Supreme Court case United States versus the Amistad. In so doing, he successfully argued for the freedom of the illegally enslaved Amistad Africans. Finally, it is worth noting that much of Adams' unfulfilled agenda was implemented under future presidents. Ideas like federal funding for college education, an expanded Navy, and federal assistance for transportation improvements like railroads were authorized during America's Gilded Age. And speaking of the Gilded Age, that is the era where we find the second president on our short list. Ladies and gentlemen, we give you Benjamin Harrison. Born in North Bend, Ohio in 1833, Harrison was the grandson of William Henry Harrison, a president best known for dying after only a month in office. Educated at Miami University in Oxford, Ohio, Benjamin Harrison relocated to Indianapolis, Indiana in 1854 to pursue a legal career and raise his family with his newlywed wife, Carolyn Scott. They would have 2 children, Russell and Mary. 3 years later, Harrison was elected Indianapolis city attorney. He also joined the Republican Party and campaigned for presidential candidates John C. Fremont and Abraham Lincoln. When the Civil War broke out in 1861, Harrison joined the Union Army and eventually achieved the rank of brigadier general. After the war ended, Harrison returned to Indianapolis to resume his legal and political careers. Despite a failed run for governor in 1876, the state legislature elected him to the U.S. Senate in 1880. Harrison served one term. As senator, he endorsed civil service reforms and voted against the 1882 Chinese Exclusion Act. Yet it was economics which shaped Gilded Age partisan politics, and the main issue in the 1888 presidential election was the protective tariff. As the Republican nominee, Harrison favored high tariffs to protect domestic industries while Democrats preferred free trade. The election of 1888 was very close. The incumbent Grover Cleveland won the popular vote by more than 94,000 votes, but Harrison prevailed in the Electoral College by winning key swing states like New York and Indiana. Anyway, Harrison had a productive presidency, largely because the Republicans controlled Congress for the first half of his term. Here's a brief list of what he achieved. The McKinley Tariff raised duties on imported goods by 50%. Sherman Antitrust Act, designed to regulate monopolies and trusts. Dependent and Disability Pension Act, expanded eligible Civil War pensioners from 500,000 to nearly 1 million. Second Morrill Act, primarily chartered public educational institutions which are known today as historically black colleges and universities. Land Revision Act, created the National Forest System. Immigration Act of 1891, opened the world-famous Ellis Island Immigration Station in New York Harbor. His administration also admitted 6 states: North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana, Washington, Idaho, and Wyoming. Finally, Harrison authorized a naval buildup which enlarged the Navy from 39 vessels in 1889 to 160 by 1898. Sadly, his administration supported the overthrow of the Hawaiian monarchy in January of 1893, but that's a subject for another video. But Harrison is also remembered for his failures. The Democrats blamed Harrison's pension programs for depleting a budget surplus that he inherited from the Cleveland administration. Harrison promoted a voting rights bill to protect African Americans' right to vote throughout the southern states. Unfortunately, the bill died in the Senate. Harrison also refused to support steelworkers who went on strike in Homestead, Pennsylvania. Thus, the voting public began to view him as an ally of big business. Speaking of commerce, his McKinley Tariff also backfired. It led to higher prices, which outraged most Americans. Finally, the U.S. Army committed the Wounded Knee Massacre of 1890. Army soldiers indiscriminately killed between 150 and 300 men, women, and children of the Lakota Sioux Nation. As a result of these policy failures, the Republicans lost control of Congress, and Harrison faced an uphill battle for re-election with a 3-way race. The election of 1892 featured a resurgent Democratic Party that had renominated Grover Cleveland and a new Farmer Labor Party, the Populist Party, that selected James Weaver for president. Long story short, the election was a disaster for Harrison. Grover Cleveland easily won a second non-consecutive presidential term. After his defeat, Harrison moved back to Indianapolis. He served on the Purdue University Board of Trustees, and most notably, he represented the nation of Venezuela in its eastern border dispute with British Guiana in 1895. While an international tribunal ruled in favor of Great Britain, Harrison achieved worldwide respect for his efforts. In 1901, Harrison contracted influenza. The infection led to pneumonia, and he passed away at his home at age 67. Among the legacies of Benjamin Harrison's presidency were education, environmental protection, and America's rise to global power. The 20th century became the American century, with the United States taking a leading role in managing global affairs. However, the third president on our list held a, let's just say, contrary view of America's role in the world. The America First president, Donald J. Trump, was known throughout the world prior to 2016 as a real estate developer and reality television star. When he announced his candidacy in June 2015, Trump wanted to make America great again. But his MAGA campaign thrived on misinformation, racism, xenophobia, and baseless conspiracy theories. Yet Trump shocked the world when he won the presidency in 2016. But how did he do it? There are many reasons, the most important being geopolitics. Besides winning Florida and all the states that Mitt Romney carried in 2012, Trump took 5 of the Blue Wall industrial Midwest states of Iowa, Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. These states have large white working-class voters who voted for Trump because he denounced the free trade policies of the Clinton administration. In the 1990s, President Bill Clinton spearheaded trade deals such as NAFTA and mainland China's admission to the World Trade Organization. According to the Economic Policy Institute, NAFTA cost the United States 415,000 manufacturing jobs between 1994 and 2010. And trade deficits with the People's Republic of China led to the loss of 3.7 million jobs between 2001 and 2018. Roughly 2/3 of those jobs were in manufacturing. Trump's combative rhetoric against America's NAFTA partners in the PRC resonated with many Midwestern voters who saw themselves and their communities as victims of globalization. The political strategy worked. Trump won the Electoral College even though Hillary Clinton won the popular vote by more than 3 million votes. Unfortunately for Trump, the strategy that allowed him to win the presidency was largely useless for his 2020 campaign. So how did Trump fail to win a second term? Well, there are four main reasons. First, Trump failed to grow his base. Most presidents try to reach across the aisle to work with the opposition. Trump never did. His approval rating never went above 50%. Second, Trump's rhetoric employed bigotry, fear, and his own narcissism. In so doing, he refused to condemn white supremacy after both the Charlottesville, Virginia, and the nationwide George Floyd protests. And he openly admired authoritarian strongmen like Vladimir Putin and North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un. The third reason was the economy. Until spring 2020, Trump could run on a strong economy and low unemployment. But he only viewed the economy as a function of stock market performance and whether he could win a trade war with China. The fact is, he could not. He did succeed in renegotiating NAFTA. The new United States-Mexico-Canada trade agreement went into effect in mid-2020. But all of Trump's talk of a strong economy went out the window when the COVID-19 pandemic began. And yes, the way in which Trump mishandled the current pandemic is the fourth reason for his electoral defeat. Indeed, Trump downplayed the seriousness of the virus, ignored the advice of medical experts like Dr. Anthony Fauci, and failed to press Congress for more relief beyond the 2020 CARES Act. In the end, Trump failed to understand how much the country had changed in the last 4 years. And he was running against a popular candidate in Joe Biden, the former vice president known for his intelligence, competence, and empathy. When the final votes were tallied, Joe Biden had crushed Trump in the popular vote, winning by nearly 7 million. Yet the electoral vote was still fairly close. So what was the point in talking about these three presidents? Well, if one fails to win the popular vote the first time he or she runs for president, yet wins the Electoral College, the chances of winning re-election are narrow at best. And while George W. Bush did lose the popular vote in 2000, he did win a second term in 2004. But his electoral triumph occurred amidst a surge of patriotism that followed the 9/11 attacks. Were it not for September 11th, it is likely that Mr. Bush would have been a one-term president. One thing is clear, however. The American electorate has always questioned the legitimacy of any presidential candidate who fails to win the White House without first winning the popular vote. After all, an election is little more than a popularity contest. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, hit the subscribe button and ring the bell icon. We would also like to mention that we are now on Twitter. Please find the link to 10th and Central Productions Twitter feed in the description below. Thank you again, and stay positive.